Benoy Kumar Sarkar, who lived between 1887 and 1949, was the pioneering Indian thinker on international relations. In 1919, Sarkar authored a study in the American Political Science Review presenting a Hindu theory of international relations that drew on thinkers such as Kautilya, Manu and Shookra, as well as the text of the Mahabharata. This theory was an attempt to construct an Indian vision of international relations, taking into account the country's unique cultural and religious perspectives. Sarkar's work has been hailed as a pioneering effort in forging a non-Western approach to international relations. Benoy Kumar Sarkar was able to research and write in 5 languages: English, German, French, Italian, and his mother tongue, Bengali. He was also a scholar in the Sanskrit language. During his lifetime, he wrote 53 books and monographs and was a committed nationalist, heavily influenced by Sister Nivedita, the key disciple of Swami Vivekananda. His ideas of the basis of India's rise, both cultural, political, social, and economic, are more relevant than ever before. Global Order is proud to present the first Benoy Kumar Sarkar Memorial Lecture. This lecture has been given from London by Dr. Gautam Sen, who taught international political economy for more than 2 decades at the London School of Economics and has written the introduction to Global Order's new book, reintroducing Benoy Kumar Sarkar's work.
Good morning and good afternoon, depending on where you are. I have been honored to deliver the inaugural lecture which has been established this year for Benoy Kumar Sarkar, a great Indian scholar and political activist as well. I'm absolutely delighted that an important article of his on ancient Indian geopolitical and strategic thought, as well as his monograph on the impact of ancient India on the outside world, is going to now be republished. It will be a source of genuine intellectual edification and pleasure even today. If I may add, it will also right the wrong of his unjust consignment to obscurity, perhaps for showing exultant interest in India's ancient history. It was likely because of displeasure to the partisan secular ideologues that dominate India's social science and historical establishment to this day. But anyway, I'm delighted that this project has been inaugurated. Benoy Sarkar was born on the 26th of December in 1887. He was an Indian social scientist, historian, professor, and nationalist. He was born in Malda, West Bengal, and he was educated in Malda. And he actually joined the University of Calcutta at the age of 13 after standing first in the entrance examination. Although Benoy Sarkar was from a humble background, he was a child prodigy who excelled in taking public exams. And he graduated the top of his class with double honors in English and history from Calcutta's renowned Presidency College in 1905 at the age of 18. The following year, he gained his master's. And here we start the most interesting part of the start of his life, of this extraordinary man. Once he had finished his master's and he was a mere 19 years old, he was offered a prestigious state scholarship to pursue further studies in England, as well as the post of deputy magistrate. These would have been the start to a glittering career in the establishment. This was the year, 1906, when the stir started over the partition of Bengal. And Benoy Sarkar declined the offer of a scholarship and the opportunity to become a deputy magistrate and joined the Swadeshi protest movement that was stirring Bengal and spreading to other parts of India. He had been deeply influenced by Swami Vivekananda, as well as Satish Chandra, the founder of the Dawn Society. And when the Bengal National College was subsequently formed and inaugurated that very year by Maharishi Aurobindo Ghosh as its first principal, Benoy Sarkar and other members of the Dawn Society formed its core academic staff. He rapidly became involved at the age of 20 in 1907 in the national education movement. And he had been influenced by Sister Nivedita in this context. By 1907, he was active setting up national schools in Malda district, where he was born and grew up, emphasizing vernacular education in vernacular language and female education, very importantly. Benoy Sarkar wrote several books in English during the subsequent 5 years to overcome the shortage of textbooks. He also founded a number of institutions, the Bengali Institute of Sociology, Bengali Asia Academy, Bengali Dante Society, as well as a number of others, including one on American culture. He really was a polymath. He wrote in 5 languages, that is Bengali, English, German, French, and Italian, and he was also fluent in Sanskrit and other Indian languages like Hindi. He published a very large volume of books on a variety of topics, actually 54 or so in number, and many booklets in English alone. His total output actually amounted to 30,000 pages. Anybody interested in a complete list of this extraordinary scholar's publications should look at the book by Bandyopadhyay titled The Political Ideas of Benoy Kumar Sarkar. In 1925, Benoy Sarkar became a lecturer in the Department of Economics, University of Calcutta, and eventually he was to become its professor and head in 1947. He went on a lecture tour of the United States in 1949 at the age of 61, delivering 150 lectures, charming audiences with his style and themes. During this trip, he interacted with scholars like John Dewey, Talcott Parsons, Carl Zimmerman, and Raymond Leslie Buell. Very sadly, he was taken ill in late October 1949 while he was in the capital, Washington, and passed away after a month's struggle in hospital. That was the life of one very important Indian scholar. His essay on Syriac Indian thought, published in the American Political Science Review, is a remarkable work of scholarship. Substantive, yet succinct. It drew on thinkers like Kautilya, Manu, Shookra, and the text of Mahabharata. In 1921, he authored a further study in the Political Science Quarterly presenting the Hindu theory of the state. According to Professor Barry Buzan, emeritus of the London School of Economics, and Amitav Acharya, and if I may quote, Sarkar's works may be the first major international relations contributions by an Indian and one of the first modern efforts to develop an indigenous, non-Western theory of international relations. This is a measure of the significance of Benoy Sarkar's scholarship. If I may briefly survey his thought in the next 10 minutes or so, ancient Indian strategic thought posits adversarial relationships between neighboring states as the norm. It is the so-called doctrine of mandala. And Niti Shastri is a science of enmity, hatred, espionage, and intrigue. And the art of 1,001 methods of preparedness for the next war. This is a perspective which is more Hobbesian and traceable to Aristotle than from Hugo Grotius, the great European thinker. This is the theory of Vigi Isu, the Kautilyan doctrine of Mandala associated with Kamandaka as well. It is about the notion of perpetual war in the relations of states. And I may add, this is a problem which bedevils India, and Matsyanaya, this idea of war, is also a domestic phenomenon which must be combated if the state is to survive. And this is the issue which India is dealing with today. Yet, this political theory, the political theory of ancient India, conceives of the possibility of universal peace through the doctrine of Sarva Bhauma, which is the rule by one Samrat over the entire political landscape of the earth. The Hindu conception of how universal peace is achievable mirrors the federation of empires envisaged by the renowned 14th century European thinker Bartolus, which is virtually identical to that of ancient Vedic sages. Then we come to the much longer monograph on ancient Indian history, which actually dates back to 1916. And it outlines a picture of India's geographical, political, and cultural reach and its infinite vastness. Sarkar argues it exceeds the Roman imperium in physical expanse and the numbers of people it encompasses. It is about Indian culture reaching way beyond its territory and also absorbing newcomers into Indian civilization and excelling in every sphere of human endeavor. This is the era of the Gupta dynasty from the 4th to the 6th centuries, though it had reached its height by the 5th. This is considered to have been India's golden age in every sense of the word. And it had already encompassed the work of Kautilya, and in this period, the transcendental genius of Kalidasa, the counterpart of Shakespeare and Goethe. If I may add my own observation, this golden age, in a way, mirrors the intellectual renaissance, cultural renaissance of Bengal in the 19th century, that is in the third quarter, especially from, say, the 1860s onwards. This is also the period of the Gupta dynasty when Hindu culture was transmitted to China, Japan, and East Asia. And also Java. And the internationalism of India also encompassed the borderlands as well as Persia. Then we come to the issues which he deals with, which perhaps require some comment. The issue of India's presumed Aryanization in the aftermath of 1500 BC. Now, the time when Benoy Sarkar wrote his manuscript, most thinkers of the period shared this. And this was propagated then and now propagated vigorously by the Christian church in order to divide Indians between the north and the south, in order to aid conversion to Christianity. It says that the Aryans invaded north from the north of the Vindhyas, originating in modern South Asia, and enslaved the people of the south and erased their culture. This now turns out to be completely false. Let me just give you two quick points that are relevant in this context. The first is that the Aryans were a shepherd people. These herders could not have memorized the Rig Veda, which, according to Michael Witzel of Harvard, and its transmission over thousands of years is the greatest feat of memory in human history. And he argues that this could not have been accomplished by cattle herders. It is also interesting to note that the so-called Aryans had no memory of where they came from. Yet, they are presumed to have conceived and memorized the Rig Veda. So that alone shows this is not true. It is also the case that genetic evidence now has demonstrated the Rig Veda was conceived at least 1,000 years before the incursion of any groups from the north. One shortcoming of Benoy Sarkar's otherwise splendid manuscript is that he also believed in the idea of a agreeable composite culture. I think this stemmed from the fact that in Bengal, intellectuals were trying to create unity between Muslims and Hindus in order to further the independence struggle. And they all went along with this idea that the preceding period of Muslim rule was perfectly acceptable. Now, this is now contested. Then we come to the idea of caste. And Benoy Sarkar makes a very interesting point that in that early period, that groups cannot be stereotyped and remain very elastic. And the reason for that was the status of groups depended on who ruled, which generals, which rulers. And therefore, it moved up and down greatly. There was great flexibility in this so-called inflexible caste system. He also correctly anticipates the work of Sumit of Brown by saying the origin of this misrepresentation was with the Portuguese, who imposed their parochial experience of Iberia in their interpretation of what they encountered in India. So, in all that scholarship, Benoy Sarkar was able to infer the deeply problematic misrepresentation of caste in ancient India and therefore its misuse subsequently. Benoy Sarkar places a very high regard on Kalidasa. And he says he belongs to the highest pedestal of intellectual and spiritual and aesthetical achievement. He is the true embodiment of Indianism, to quote him, and he rates it above the Rig Veda, Arthashastra, Tripitaka, even the Gita, etc., Vedanta. In the words of Kalidasa in the Raghu Vamsam, the light that never was on sea or land, the sannyas, vairagya, ahimsa, yoga, preparation for the other world, the idea of nothingness of this world, and the desire for mukti, or the perpetual freedom from bondage. This is why Benoy Sarkar places him above all writers before or since. Let me conclude by saying the publication of Benoy Sarkar's scholarly article and monograph is an important event and needs affirmation. He is one of the last of the inspired thinkers who embody the roots of India's Renaissance, which began with Ram Mohan Roy, Bankim Chandra Chatterjee, and then reached great heights in the 1860s with Rabindranath Tagore, Swami Vivekananda, Dinesh Chandra Sen, the historian of Bengal literature and language, followed by Chadunath Sarkar, historians Radhakumar Mukherjee, and R.C. Majumdar, and of course Benoy Kumar Sarkar himself. This great era of intellectual life ended really with the passing of Satyajit Ray. And after that, what has prevailed in Bengal, and in fact somewhat before, was the nihilistic virus of communism, which is almost as consequential in its negative impact as the Ghaznavid invasions of India. Thank you very much.